My name was Youssef. I was a muezzin, a voice echoing through the streets of Damascus 5 times a day, calling the faithful to prayer. Respected, admired, I seemed to embody the very essence of devotion. But within, I was trapped in a chasm of doubt, where questions lurked like specters in the dark. For years I stood on that minaret, reciting the Adhan, feeling more lost with each prayer. The vibrant community around me thrived on tradition, yet I found myself unable to connect to the divine, drowning in a silence that screamed louder than any call to prayer. It was a suffocating emptiness, and in my soul, a battle raged. Was it faith or mere compliance? Then came the moment everything changed. During one such call to prayer, darkness engulfed me, not the kind that cloaks the night, but an overwhelming void that snatched the breath from my very being. In that shattering instant of collapse, I was drawn into an encounter beyond my wildest fears and hopes. I encountered Jesus. In his light, I was confronted with a profound truth, not one taught in the corridors of my childhood, but a revelation of a spiritual battle far greater than I had ever imagined. I saw how religion, once a sanctuary, had woven veils of deception, clouding the light of God's love. I returned from that encounter transformed, yet isolated, my heart caught between fear of rejection and a desperate need to share what I had witnessed. So here I am, inviting you to journey with me through the shadows of my past and the light of this newfound truth. This isn't just my story. It's a glimpse into a battle for the soul that you might find echoes in your own life. Before we embark on this path together, I urge you to comment below. Where are you watching from, and what time stands still in your world? And if this resonates with you, if you love Jesus and seek the truth, subscribe to Truth from Beyond. The revelations ahead could change everything you thought you knew. In the conservative neighborhood of Damascus where I grew up, life revolved around deep devotion to our Islamic traditions. As a muezzin, my days were filled with the cadence of calls to prayer, each note resonating not just through the air but deep within my spirit. Yet, beneath the routine of ritual and reverence lay an oppressive silence that concealed the doubts and fears festering within me. Each day, as I stood atop the minaret, the vibrant city sprawled below, I found myself wrestling with an internal conflict, a longing for something deeper than tradition could offer. I questioned the meaning of faith, the realities of the world outside our walls, and the whispers that echoed through my prayers, urging me to seek truths beyond what I had been taught. One fateful morning, while calling the Adhan, I was suddenly engulfed by an overwhelming sensation that transcended my physical surroundings. As I began my call, something shifted within me, a feeling that drew me toward a transcendent experience. The words left my lips, but my thoughts drifted into that familiar darkness. It was a moment like no other. It felt as though the air around me shimmered with possibility. In that stillness, I found myself slipping into an altered state of consciousness, a near-death experience that would forever change the course of my life. As the darkness enveloped me, I felt an energy building, an anticipation that coursed through my very being until a radiant light pierced through the blackness. Emerging from the void, I stood in the presence of Jesus. His love and compassion surrounded me like a warm embrace, awakening a flood of emotions and truths long buried within my heart. In that moment, every question I had ever pondered merged into a singular clarity. Jesus spoke to me, revealing profound truths concealed by the layers of religious tradition I had been raised to uphold. I began to see the hidden agenda behind the structures that dictated so much of my life, including the manipulation by the elite who fostered division among people to maintain their power. His message illuminated the spiritual war we find ourselves in, the battle for hearts and minds that often goes unseen in the everyday lives we lead. I witnessed fleeting visions of conflict, not just in distant lands, but in the very fabric of our society. I began to understand how these hidden agendas perpetuated deception, instilling fear and separation within communities. As Jesus shared this revelation with me, the urgency of embracing truth resonated in my heart, an urgent need to awaken from the slumber of ignorance and denial that has kept us bound for far too long. When I finally awoke in the familiar surroundings of the mosque, the realization of what had transpired consumed me. I was transformed, yet the weight of my experience felt like a double-edged sword. The fear of rejection by my community and family intertwined with an insatiable urge to speak about the love and truth I had encountered. I knew that to share my awakening would mean risking everything: my position as a respected muazzin, my family's approval, and the very fabric of the life I had built. Yet, the call to share this revelation pulsed through me, spurring a desire to bridge the gap between my faith and the larger truths that had been revealed. Conversations with those around me became a battleground of sorts, filled with both hope and apprehension. I began to reach out to friends and fellow believers, eager to discuss the revelations I had received. But with each discussion came the fear that they would dismiss my journey as a momentary lapse, or worse, as a heretical betrayal of our shared values. I envisioned organizing gatherings where people could explore their own spiritual truths, where the fear of judgment would be replaced by acceptance and understanding. As I contemplated this new mission, the tension within me mounted. Could I really inspire others to seek the truth, even with the potential for backlash hanging over me like a cloud? Would my community embrace the message of awakening? Or would I find myself standing alone in a world where love and truth often clash with tradition? As a muezzin, my life was dedicated to calling the faithful to prayer 5 times a day. People revered me for my commitment and the passion I brought to that sacred duty. Yet, beneath the surface, I struggled with an emotional emptiness that gnawed at my soul. Each Adhan I recited echoed through the streets of my neighborhood, but instead of filling me with joy, it heightened a sense of disconnection. I found myself questioning the very essence of my faith, grappling with the tension between my strict religious obligations and an unsatisfied spiritual life. I felt trapped in a box defined by expectations and traditions that no longer resonated with my heart. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day, I collapsed onto my bed, overwhelmed by both physical fatigue and emotional turmoil. As I drifted into sleep, the darkness enveloped me, pulling me down into a void that felt both isolating and liberating. It was during this uncanny state that I encountered Jesus, a radiant presence emanating love and warmth. His appearance was striking. I felt an overwhelming sense of recognition, as if I were standing before the embodiment of truth itself. In that moment, every doubt I had struggled with melted away, replaced by an understanding that penetrated the very core of my being. Jesus began to reveal hidden truths to me, truths about the spiritual war that raged around us and within us. I saw flashes of the elite manipulating the narrative of faith, creating divisions among communities to maintain control. The deception was everywhere, festering like a wound that had long gone untreated. I realized that many, including myself, had been ensnared in a cycle of fear and misunderstanding, unaware that love and unity were just beyond our grasp. The urgent desire for awakening surged within me, a call to challenge these deceptions and embrace the truth that would liberate not just myself but everyone around me. Awakening from that surreal experience, I felt transformed yet aware of the challenges ahead. My revelations would demand courage. Courage to speak against the hidden agendas that had suffocated spiritual growth and understanding for years. The thought of sharing my encounter with Jesus filled me with both exhilaration and dread. Would my family accept this new truth, or would they perceive it as a betrayal? The disconnection I felt grew heavier as the reality settled in. I would have to navigate the tumultuous waters of skepticism and rejection. The spiritual awakening I had experienced was profound, but the social implications were daunting. As I began to share my newfound insight with others, I encountered both support and resistance. Conversations with friends and community members often stirred conflicting opinions. I spoke about the need to break free from the chains of deception that prevent true spiritual growth. Many were hesitant, clinging tightly to their beliefs, apprehensive of a life where questions outnumbered answers. Yet, there were also those who felt the stirrings of awakening within themselves. Seeing their eyes light up with a sense of truth rekindled my belief in the power of sharing. Yet, the fear of ostracism lingered like an uninvited guest, reminding me of the potential consequences. The road ahead was uncertain, yet my heart was set on the journey, determined to guide others toward their own revelations, even in the face of adversity. Would I be capable of standing firm in the light of truth, or would the darkness of doubt prevail? As I performed my prayers each day, a growing void settled deep within my spirit, an unsettling emptiness that seemed to expand with each recitation of the Adhan. A muazin for years, I had dedicated my life to calling others to prayer, yet in those moments of stillness, I found myself grappling with an inability to connect with God, a detachment that weighed heavily on my heart. The doctrines I had always accepted began to feel like chains, binding me to a belief system that no longer resonated with my truth. With each bowing of my head, each intonation of sacred verses, I silently questioned my faith and the meaning behind the rituals that had once filled me with purpose. In the hours that followed, I began experiencing unsettling dreams that haunted my nights. These dreams were vivid glimpses into my subconscious, showcasing scenes filled with light and warmth, juxtaposed with shadows and despair. They tugged at my heart, stirring a longing for understanding, a yearning to break free from the illusion that my spiritual life had become. I often awakened in the early hours, drenched in sweat, with a sense of urgency gnawing at me. I felt as if the universe was imploring me to listen, to search for deeper truths that lay hidden beneath the surface of my understanding. One fateful night, the culmination of my struggles led me to an encounter that forever altered my journey. As I drifted into a restless sleep, I found myself enveloped in darkness once again. But this time, it was different. I was not alone. A brilliant light broke through the shadows, and there stood Jesus, radiating love and compassion. His presence filled me with an overwhelming warmth, a feeling that I had been searching for all my life. In that sacred space, I felt every doubt, every burden lifted as he spoke to me, inviting me to see beyond the fears and deceptions that had kept me ensnared. Jesus revealed to me the hidden truths about our world, how the spiritual war we face is fought not only within individuals, but also waged by the elite who manipulate society for their own gain. I saw glimpses of the agenda behind the systems that governed us, how they thrived on division, creating chaos and misunderstanding among people. The urgency of his message resonated in my soul, igniting a passion to awaken from the slumber of ignorance that had long clouded my vision. I understood that this light was not just my own. It was a collective illumination meant to break through the darkness that held countless souls captive. Returning to consciousness felt surreal. Each breath was laced with a newfound clarity and purpose. I understood that I could no longer live in the shadows of societal expectations, nor could I ignore the calling I had received. I was compelled to share my experience and the transformation I had undergone. But as I stood at the precipice of this awakening, fear clawed at my heart. Would my family welcome this new truth? Or would they cast me aside for daring to step outside the bounds of what they considered acceptable? Despite the turmoil within, the truth felt profound and necessary, pushing me toward a path filled with potential and uncertainty. Would I have the courage to embrace this awakening fully? To share Jesus' message of love, even if it meant facing rejection? During one call to Adhan, as I stood atop the minaret, I felt an unexpected wave of dizziness wash over me. The familiar rhythm of the call that had always filled me with purpose turned into a cacophony of uncertain sounds in my ears. Suddenly, everything went dark. I collapsed, my body giving in to a state of unconsciousness that felt like being pulled into a vast void. This moment, so ordinary yet transformative, was the catalyst that would change my life forever. In this liminal space between life and death, I encountered a luminous figure. It was Jesus, radiating an overwhelming light that pierced through the darkness enveloping me. His presence filled me with a sense of love and acceptance that transcended all barriers I had constructed in my mind. As he approached, I felt every doubt, every fear I had ever held begin to dissolve. In that moment, it was as if the walls built by my adherence to rigid religious practices crumbled, revealing the beauty of a universal truth that had long remained hidden from my understanding. Jesus began to share revelations with me, truths about the spiritual war that raged both within and around us. I saw glimpses of the hidden agendas orchestrated by the elite, manipulating faith to generate fear and division. Their deception kept people shackled, fostering conflict among communities that should have stood united in love. I realized how easily I had been ensnared in these same traps, bowing to expectations that stifled my spiritual growth. The intense need for awakening surged within me as Jesus spoke, urging me to embrace this truth, not only for myself, but for the countless others caught in similar struggles. In that sacred encounter, I also witnessed the ways our spiritual practices could obscure the divine light that is meant to guide us. The rituals I had performed daily suddenly felt like mere motions, detached from the deeper connection I now craved. As Jesus revealed the truth to me, I understood that the essence of faith is not found solely in tradition, but in the living, breathing relationship we cultivate with the divine. The love and compassion he embodied were what I had been searching for, and I felt a newfound sense of responsibility igniting within me to share this revelation with others. Gradually, I found myself pulled back from that luminous space, waking up in a hospital room filled with the sterile scent of antiseptic and the beeping of machines. The experience felt surreal, but the urgency of what I had seen lingered. I knew I could not keep this profound truth to myself, even as fear of rejection from my community crept back in. How could I share these revelations without being labeled a heretic? Yet I felt an undeniable call to action, to foster an awakening in others, to help them break free from the chains of deception that bind them. My heart raced at the thought of the possibilities ahead, but uncertainties loomed like shadows over my newfound purpose. Would I find the strength to stand firm as I sought to share the love and truth of Jesus? The journey ahead was both daunting and exhilarating, beckoning me to step into the light. Upon returning to life after that extraordinary near-death experience, I felt a surge of emotions, relief, confusion, and an insatiable longing to share the truth I had encountered. The minutes spent with Jesus in that moment of pure love changed everything for me. Yet, as I stepped back into the world of the living, I quickly realized that revealing this experience would not be embraced with open arms. I found myself facing the rejection of my family and community, who labeled me a heretic for daring to question the beliefs that had defined my existence. Their disbelief cut deep, leaving me grappling with a sense of isolation I never expected to feel in my own home. Every time I tried to share my experience, I was met with resistance. Friends looked at me with skepticism, and family members regurgitated their fears, insisting that my revelations were merely a figment of an overactive imagination. I was trapped between the profound truths I had witnessed and the oppressive weight of their expectations. It hurt, more than I could express, to see the disappointment in their eyes, the very people I had hoped to inspire. Each rejection fueled a storm of guilt within me, forcing me to question whether the love and awakening I experienced were worth sacrificing the relationships I cherished. How could I reconcile my spiritual journey with the fear that kept them wrapped in the confines of their traditions? Days turned into weeks as I battled the feelings of fear and guilt, constantly wondering if questioning my faith had been a mistake. I remembered the moments of enlightenment, how Jesus revealed to me the hidden agendas perpetuated by the elite that distorted our understanding of spirituality. I had witnessed the manipulation of not just individuals but entire communities. As the spiritual war raged on, fueled by deception and division, but with each rejection, the whispers of doubt grew louder in my mind. I felt as if I were walking a tightrope, balancing my newfound convictions with the risk of losing everything I had ever known. In the solitude of my thoughts, I found myself yearning to uncover more about Jesus. I dove deeper into the scriptures, seeking clarity and reinforcement for the love I had felt. Prayer became both a refuge and a battlefield. I pleaded for guidance and understanding. I reached out to others in search of wisdom, finding solace in conversations with those who shared similar experiences of awakening. Together, we confronted the uncomfortable truths about our society, how technology and misinformation perpetuated the manipulation of the masses, pushing us further into division. Each discussion ignited a flame of hope within me, reminding me that I wasn't alone in this journey. Yet, the looming specter of rejection from my family never left my thoughts. As I worked to redefine my identity, I held on to the hope that one day they might come to understand my transformation. I saw clearly that the love and truth I had encountered were not bound to one faith or tradition. They were universal, and I wanted to share that light with everyone I loved. But with the possibility of their dismissal hanging over me, the internal conflict only intensified. As I prepared to take further steps in my journey, I couldn't help but wonder, could I embrace my truth while still reaching out to those I had left behind? Would they accept the awakening I had embraced, or would my search for truth ultimately lead to deeper isolation? Secretly, I embarked on a quest for truth that felt both liberating and terrifying. For so long, I had followed the dictates of my faith, reciting the Adhan 5 times a day as a respected muazin in my community. Each call to prayer echoed through the streets of my neighborhood, infusing my life with a sense of duty. But after my encounter with Jesus during my near-death experience, substantial questions began to unravel the solid ground beneath my feet. Driven by an insatiable curiosity, I found myself sneaking away at night to read the Bible and watch testimonies from others who had experienced their own awakenings. The stories I heard were powerful, filled with raw emotion and undeniable truth. I could feel the spiritual war raging within me as I wrestled with my beliefs. Each page I turned, each testimony I watched, deepened my understanding of love and connection that transcended religious boundaries. However, amidst the solace I found in my newfound faith, the reality of my situation loomed heavy over me. I knew that embracing this truth could sever the bonds with my family and community, the very people who had shaped my identity. The fear of rejection gnawed at my heart as I journeyed through this beautifully intricate process of awakening. As I immersed myself in Scripture, the revelation that Jesus brought to me during my experience began to transform my perspective. I realized that the hidden agendas of the elite not only manipulated societal norms but also sowed division among people who should be united by love and compassion. This manipulation created a culture of fear, one that kept us isolated and blind to the truth. I felt the urgency of my mission growing. I was compelled to share what I had learned, to shine a light on the deceptions cloaked in tradition. I couldn't let fear dictate my actions, even as it threatened to paralyze me. The deeper I delved into this journey, the more I recognized the disconnect between my heart and the life I was leading. My late-night prayers transformed from obligatory recitations to heartfelt conversations with Jesus. I poured out my fears, my desires for understanding, and my longing for acceptance. I realized this awakening did not strip me of my heritage. Instead, it enriched it by revealing the profound love that underlies all truth. I wanted to embrace this love and share it with as many people as possible. But the thought of alienating my family haunted me. Would they ever comprehend the shift in my heart? Would they consider me an outcast for following a path they deemed heretical? With every passing day, my determination to pursue this truth became increasingly urgent. I envisioned gatherings where people like me, those struggling with their own beliefs, could come together, share their experiences, and navigate their paths toward understanding. In those meetings, we could openly discuss the spiritual war we face, the patterns of deception we encounter, and the steps needed to foster a collective awakening. Yet, even as my vision expanded, the weight of my family's expectations pressed on my shoulders. I could feel the duality of my existence, my commitment to my faith intertwined with my desire to honor my family. As I prepared to share my story, a lingering question remained. Could I boldly embrace this awakening without losing the love and support of those I held dear? Realizing that my experience held a purpose beyond myself shifted everything for me. After that life-changing encounter with Jesus during my near-death experience, I understood that the revelations I received were not meant to be kept in the shadows. I felt a powerful urge to evangelize, to share the profound love and truth I had been introduced to. Though the thought of stepping into this role stirred a mix of excitement and fear, I knew I wasn't just sharing a personal journey. I was called to challenge the hidden agendas perpetuated by the elite that breed deception and division in our society. Every day since my awakening, I've felt that urgency growing within me. The feelings of guilt and isolation from my previous life began to dissipate as I embraced the responsibility of sharing my message. I found it increasingly vital to communicate the truth of what I had experienced. Even as I walked the tightrope between my old identity and my new mission, the fear of being ridiculed or rejected lingered in my mind. However, the love Jesus showed me eclipsed those fears. I couldn't ignore the calling within me. It felt like a fire igniting my soul, pushing me toward action. I began by speaking with close friends who had supported me throughout my struggles. I recounted my experience in the depths of darkness, the moment I met Jesus, and the revelations he shared with me about the spiritual war that rages within and around us. Many were intrigued by the truths I revealed about the manipulation of society by those in power, the hidden agendas that stifled authentic spiritual connection and love. I could see their eyes widen as I described the urgent need for awakening, not just as individuals but as a community united in love and understanding. Yet, I was met with varying responses. Some voices rose in skepticism, while others expressed curiosity. Conversations often turned heated as we confronted the uncomfortable truth about the deceptions that have plagued our existence, about how misinformation fuels division among people. I felt the weight of responsibility on my shoulders each time I shared my story, wanting desperately to encourage others to embrace their own paths of truth. The tensions grew, and I could sense the spiritual war not only within myself, but within the very hearts of those around me. Amidst the challenges, I carried a hope that my family might ultimately understand my transformation. The fear of losing their acceptance loomed like a shadow, but I had to step into my truth. I envisioned gatherings where open discussions could flourish, fostering an environment where love could replace fear. I imagined a community where faith was not a burden but a source of strength, encouraging every individual to rise up against the tide of deception. As I prepared to take that leap of faith, I questioned whether I could truly inspire others to awaken and join the fight for truth. Would they see the beauty in this journey? Or would they remain trapped in their own shadows of fear and misunderstanding? Symbolically, I stepped away from my home and the life I had always known, moving toward the vastness of the desert. I had felt compelled to leave behind the confines of my old identity as a muezzin, a role that had brought me both respect and spiritual emptiness. The haunting echoes of my past were still fresh in my mind, intertwining with the revelations I had received during my near-death experience with Jesus. Each painful memory I carried was a reminder of the internal struggles I faced daily, but the allure of spiritual freedom drew me forward into the unknown. As I crossed the sandy stretches of the desert, I felt lighter with each step, shedding the weight of expectation that had burdened my spirit for so long. The immense quiet surrounding me became a sanctuary for reflection, a space where I could confront the hidden agendas of deceit and manipulation that permeated our lives. In my conversations with Jesus, I had learned about the spiritual war that waged not just in my heart, but across communities and nations, an unseen battle fought by those who sought to keep us divided, controlled by fear and misunderstanding. In my solitude, I also felt the urgency to share my newfound truth. The realization that my experiences could help others fueled my determination to assist those still caught in their own spiritual struggles. I envisioned gatherings where honest discussions could flourish, a supportive environment for individuals seeking to break free from the shackles of deception. I understood that exposing the truths behind the manipulations of the elite was essential to fostering genuine awakening. Each moment I spent in the desert reminded me that the call to share my story was greater than my fears. It was a journey meant to empower not only myself, but also those around me. Reflection turned into action as I began to speak with others who sought answers. Those who had experienced their own transformations became my allies in this quest for truth. We shared our stories late into the night under the stars, weaving together a tapestry of faith, love, and awakening. Together we confronted the complexities of our lives and the societal pressures that had caused us to question everything we thought we knew. With every shared experience, the spirit of hope grew stronger. It felt like we were lighting candles in a darkened room, illuminating the path for each other as we ventured deeper into the mysteries of our existence. Yet, the underlying fear of alienating my family and community lingered. Each time I opened my heart to my new understanding of Jesus and the revelations I had received, I felt the shadow of their potential disapproval hover above me. I remembered their voices filled with confusion, their faces etched with disappointment when I had first shared my thoughts. But underpinning that fear was also a quiet conviction that they deserved to know the truth, the same truths that had liberated my spirit. I realized that deep down, I still hoped for reconciliation, an understanding that could bridge the gap between my past and the awakening unfolding before me. As I stood in the desert, ready to share my story with the world, I could sense that my journey had only just begun, filled with possibilities and challenges lying ahead. Years have passed since that life-altering moment when I collapsed while calling the Adhan, an event that changed everything for me. After emerging from the coma, my life took on a new trajectory fueled by the profound encounter I had experienced with Jesus. His presence brought clarity, illuminating the truths I had sought yet could not grasp amidst the shadows of my former beliefs. I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude and purpose, and I knew my path was now set on a course that would lead me into the depths of missionary work, sharing the revelations I had received with the world. As I dedicated myself to this mission, I began connecting with communities that were eager to understand the deeper meanings behind faith and spirituality. My testimony started gaining traction, resonating with those who felt trapped in their own spiritual wars. I spoke passionately about the hidden agendas that often drive a wedge between people, the manipulations by the elite that perpetuate deception, and how society places barriers on the truth. Each conversation was like planting seeds of hope in the hearts of those eager for awakening, and I could see their eyes light up as they explored the messages I had been compelled to share. Despite finding fulfillment in my new role, the pain of separation from my family still lingered heavily in my heart. I thought often of my parents and siblings, recalling the warmth of our gatherings tainted by the tension of my transformation. I held on to a flicker of hope that one day they might come to understand my journey and the love I had discovered through Jesus. The call to evangelize felt urgent, but the weight of familial rejection stung. I wondered how I could rebuild those bridges, and if speaking my truth would serve as a path for others to find their own understanding without casting me aside. Each day became a mixture of joy in helping others and sorrow over the rift that existed between me and my family. In sharing the revelation I had received, I discovered the true power of vulnerability. Conversations became moments of connection, where we dove into discussions about the essence of faith, the societal structures that often led to disillusionment, and the love that could bridge the gaps between faiths. With every person who expressed gratitude for the insights I shared, I felt an echo of Jesus, love resonating through me. It became clear that my story was not just my own. It was part of a larger narrative seeking to inspire change in a world steeped in division and fear. As I continued my efforts in the community, I confronted the ongoing challenges of balancing my mission with the need for reconciliation with my family. I realized that the awakening I experienced was not only a personal journey but also a call to those I had left behind. With each passing day, I found more courage to reach out, attempting to communicate the truths that had transformed my spirit. Despite the risk of further rejection, I remained undeterred in my passion for spreading love and truth. The spiritual fire within me burned bright, urging me to find a way to reunite with my roots, while also advocating for the universal message of awakening that I had come to embrace. Would my family one day understand and accept this path I had chosen? Or would the gap between us continue to widen? The emotional weight of that question propelled me forward, driving my desire to heal not only my heart, but also the hearts of those I love. The moment I collapsed while calling the Adhan, my life took a turn I never anticipated. One moment, I was standing at the minaret, lost in the flow of prayers, and the next, I felt myself slipping away into darkness. It was as if a curtain had fallen, separating me from everything I had known. When I opened my eyes, I was in a surreal void, surrounded by silence, a haunting absence of everything familiar. In that darkness, I wrestled with fear and confusion, wondering what would come next. Suddenly, the darkness was pierced by a brilliant light, and there he was, Jesus. The presence of Christ radiated warmth and love beyond anything I could fathom. As he approached, every doubt and fear I had held tightly faded away, replaced by a deep, overwhelming sense of peace. His eyes held a knowing that reached into the depths of my soul, and in that moment, I understood that this was not just an encounter. It was a divine revelation. Jesus began to share profound truths with me, revealing the hidden agendas orchestrated by the elite, the manipulation and deception that kept society divided and confused. With each word spoken, I felt a swell of understanding. I saw visions of conflict and strife across the world, aware of how easily we could be drawn into the lies peddled by those in power. The realization washed over me like a tidal wave. The spiritual war we face is as much about our inner battles as it is about the external, societal conflicts we navigate every day. Jesus urged me to witness to this truth, that many suffer not only from war and poverty, but also from the mental chains placed upon them by fear and misinformation. It was a powerful awakening, not just for me, but for all those who yearn for liberation. As the visions faded and I began to regain consciousness, the weight of what I had experienced consumed me. I awoke in the hospital, terrified yet exhilarated. How could I share these revelations? What would my family think? The same family that had raised me to adhere strictly to our traditional beliefs. The fear of rejection loomed large, clouding the clarity I had felt moments before. I felt torn between the love I had discovered in Jesus and the cultural ties that bound me to my family and community. Would they embrace this new facet of my identity or reject me as a traitor to our faith? Despite the fear that clawed at my heart, an insatiable desire to communicate my awakening began to take root. I started reading the Bible and exploring Christian teachings, searching for answers to questions that had long plagued me. Every word resonated with the love I had felt from Jesus, and I could see how essential it was to share these truths with others, illuminating their paths as it had illuminated mine. The urgency surged within me. I began reaching out to close friends, nervously sharing what had happened. I knew this could lead to backlash, yet I felt driven to encourage others to seek their own truths, as the spiritual war in our world demanded action and awareness. Would I find the courage to break my silence and inspire an awakening in those still caught in the shadows? As I stood at this crossroads, my heart raced, buoyed by the hope of what could be, yet haunted by the fear of losing everything I had ever known. Now that you've journeyed through my story, I must ask you something deeply personal. Have you ever felt a whisper, a call from the depths of your soul, urging you to search for truth beyond the veil of certainty? In a world that often feels defined by division and despair, there is an undeniable current of awakening, a spiritual battle that each of us is called to confront. I emerged from that encounter with Jesus, awakened to a reality far more expansive than the confines of tradition. The revelations he shared illuminated not just my life but the very fabric of our society, revealing how we are ensnared by a narrative woven by those who benefit from our division. This isn't merely about one faith or another. It's about the universal quest for love, understanding, and spiritual liberation. The weight of this truth fuels my passion to share it with you, to encourage you to unearth your own experiences and recognize the divine callings in your life. So I turn back to you. What is your truth? Have you ever felt that stirring within, an experience that made you question everything you believed to be true? I invite you to share that in the comments below. Your reflections matter. They resonate in a world eager for understanding and connection. You're not alone on this journey, and your voice could inspire someone else to embark on their own path of awakening. And as we continue to explore these profound truths together, I urge you, subscribe to Truth from Beyond and hit that notification bell. By doing so, you ensure that you are part of this unfolding journey, because what lies ahead is more revealing than you can imagine. In our next video, we'll dive into another powerful testimony that will further illuminate the light in the darkness. I'm Hamza, and I want to thank you for being with me today. Remember, each step toward truth is a step toward love and liberation. Together, let's keep searching, keep questioning, and keep fighting against the darkness. The journey has only just begun.